Welcome to the MS-Perspektive podcast. I'm Nele, MS patient, patient advocate, and author. I'm bringing you interviews, inspiration, and information about living with multiple sclerosis and show you ways how you can positively influence the disease and make the best out of your diagnosis. On MS-Perspektive.de, you will find the show notes, 11 free tips as a PDF, and lots of other information. And now the show begins. Hello and welcome to episode 143 with an interview with Dr. Boster. Dr. Boster is a medical doctor and founder at the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis in Columbus, Ohio, United States. This episode exists in 2 language versions. The original one with Dr. Boster is in English available only, but I have a transcripted and translated version where I speak his part as well for the German community. So please go ahead and choose the version that makes most sense for you. Hello, Dr. Boster. Thanks for being here. And a warm welcome to Columbus, Ohio.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to connect.
Thanks. Yeah, you are here today for the question why I should change maybe my neurologist. And to be honest, I just went to rehab, and I met some people where I thought, oh, it's really time to change your neurologist. And I found your video on YouTube, so I'm really glad you are coming to my podcast today. But maybe before we start, can you explain why you choose to become a neurologist and not something else?
Absolutely. So I actually made a decision when I was 12 not to become a neurologist, but to become an MS doctor. I didn't know at the time that MS doctors were neurologists. What I knew was the men that were assigned to take care of my uncle were unreachable. And I knew that my mother and grandmother were terrified, and I found them crying, holding each other in fear because they didn't know what to do. And this predates the interwebs. This predates the very impactful presence of the National MS Society. And I told my mother that I would learn to do it better than those men. And then I've had a very directed course since then through all of my training. I went, into high school saying, I'm going to be an MS doc. And
Cool.
It's sort of become almost mission driven to try to help impact the lives of people with MS, to energize them and to empower them and hopefully to educate as well.
Yeah. Very good. So, okay, you had really a personal, relation to your uncle who was suffering MS in a time where there was not much you could do.
So when he had MS, there were no therapies. So I as a young person got to see firsthand the natural history of multiple sclerosis, which is a very unpleasant way of saying, if we don't do anything, what happens to you?
Yeah. Okay, so why do you think it's important people don't just stay with their first neurologist they met? I know some stories, but let's show you one.
So, I have a YouTube channel, and the reason I have a YouTube channel is I want to help educate people between visits. Mm-hmm. So MS is a chronic condition, and it's a rather complex chronic condition. And if I were to meet with you 4 times a year, that's twice the national average in the United States. And yet it's wholly inadequate to teach you how to beat the disease. Yep. If I use an example of one of my favorite games, chess. If I met with you for a half an hour every 3 months to teach you the game of chess, you would suck at chess. Like, you would not be very good at chess. Because that's not enough instruction to try to actually learn the game. Yeah. Well, MS is not a game, and it's actually much more complicated than chess. And so I was struggling to figure out how I could educate in between visits, and social media, and in specific YouTube, serves a purpose in that regard. And so for the last, since 2015, last many years, I've been making at least a video a week. And my audience is really people impacted by MS. So patients and partners and providers alike. And the video that you're referencing, which I think I put out in January, was arguably a little bit inflammatory. And on purpose, it's not a clickbait. I meant what I said, but I really wanted to call out an important issue. And that's the issue of advocacy. So you are a you expert. You know more about you than I ever will. You know more about you than your spouse does. You know more about you than your doctor does. You're literally a you expert. And I think sometimes in the medical establishment, at least in the United States, we risk marginalizing the human being and telling them what we're going to do and not really allowing their voice to be heard. And that's not okay. And I was thinking, what are the things that I really want a doctor to do? And so I came up with a list of 10 things that I think doctors should be doing. Except, let's be honest, YouTube is such that if I made a list of 10 things doctors should do, nobody would watch it. So instead, I flipped it around and said, these are 10 things doctors should not do. So if you would feel more comfortable reversing it, you could flip it around and say, these are, a list of 10 positives. So that's the construct of the video. The content, I literally just listed out 10 things that are red flags to me, where if I see one of those things in a physician, I'm a little uncomfortable. Now, is it my goal that everybody flees their neurologist? No, not at all. On the contrary, what I actually would empower somebody to do is to engage their neurologist, because your relationship with your neurologist is intimate by definition. It's intimate because you're gaming out the most personal aspects of your being with that human. And I think that relationship needs to be strong. And so that's the background to why I made that video.
Yeah, thank you for that. To be honest, I have a really good neurologist, Jeff Teamson. I don't know if you know him. I think he's quite popular. And right now I'm doing 400 miles drive, or I use the train to go to him because he's really good. Yeah. And I prefer to stay with a good neurologist than have someone nearby.
Absolutely.
But anyhow, could you maybe at the beginning, before we go into details, list the 10 red flags? Because, repetition is always good.
Yeah, sure. So these are in the order that I presented them. And the context is, if your neurologist does one of these things, you should be concerned and consider whether you stay with them, all right, quote unquote. Number one is being seen only once a year. It's my opinion that that's not frequent enough. We'll come back to all of these.
Yep.
Number two is not getting at least an annual MRI of your brain. So if you're not getting an annual MRI, I'm concerned about that. Number three is not showing you your scans. So just telling you, oh, it's okay, or, oh, there's a new spot, is inadequate. Number four is not checking laboratories, because every drug except Copaxone requires monitoring. And so if they're never ordering labs, then that's a red flag to me. Number five is not screening you for common invisible symptoms. Invisible symptoms that plague MS, such as the up there's, thinking and memory, energy, mood, the down there's, bowel, bladder, bedroom, other things like pain. Like, those are invisible, but they're really important. And so if your doctor's not asking you about them, I'm bothered by that. Number six is not discussing medication adherence, because taking medicine is hard and adults aren't always good at it. And that's not a bad thing. That's just something that we have to be discussing. So if they're not asking you about that, that bothers me. Number seven is not watching you walk. So if they're not going to do a full-blown exam, there's an argument to be made not to do a full-blown exam, but they at least need to do some physical assessment. And at bare minimum, watching you walk informs them significantly. So if they're only seeing you seated in a chair with no testing, that's a red flag. Number eight is offering a first-line injection new here in 2022. And I will put some caveats around that. There are some patients that I have that are super responders to first-line therapies, and I'm not going to take them off them. I'm talking about you're newly diagnosed and they say, okay, we're going to start you off in 2022 with the first-line injection. Or if you have breakthrough disease on a drug and the doctor's offering a first-line injection as a switch, I'm not okay with that. Number nine is if the doctor says, well, go home and pick your medicine. Here's 5 pamphlets. Let me know what you think. And the last one, number 10, is the doctor not taking any efforts to learn about you as a human being. So it's my contention that if those things are present, you should take pause and explore that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we go into details. Thank you, but for that first Summary.
Overview, yeah.
So why is it so important to see your neurologist every 3 months? And in which case might it still be okay to go there less often? I mean, I go there 4 times a year and I have quite a lot of checks, but yeah.
So the goal in MS care is to not let MS make decisions for you. It's for you to live your best life despite having MS. It's to not have disease activity radiographically or clinically, and to allow your brain to age naturally. And in order to figure out if that's working, we've got to do a lot of things, like to sort that out. One of the things we have to do is we have to ask you how you're doing. Now, human beings typically remember about 2 weeks. Like if you say, like, how have you been doing? Generally speaking, the person will report on the last 2 weeks, just in general. And so if you ask someone, hey, what's been going on over the last year? They won't remember. And they may have had an attack 7 months ago. They didn't tell you about it and they got better and they forgot. I mean, just because, and so it's too infrequent. If you're seeing somebody more frequently, and it's my preference that people are seen quarterly or at least every 6 months, at least that way, there's less of a gap of time when you're learning about how the patient's doing. Similarly, the way that a neurologist helps someone with MS is by request. So your neurologist doesn't tackle you and jump on top of you and grab a syringe of a medicine and jab it in your body. On the contrary, they say, would you please take this? And then you have to decide if you want to do it or not. And it's my understanding, in my experience, that if you don't understand why, you're not very likely to do it.
Yeah.
But how am I supposed to know that you didn't understand unless we talk? So if I send you out thinking that you're going to start a medicine, but you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I can't wait a year to find out you didn't do it. And so that's one of the 3 things. The second thing, after we ask you how you're doing, is to look at functional testing. So in those 10 things, I listed one of them being walking, right? So that's a functional test. And we need to do some type of functional testing because you could develop a clumsiness with your non-dominant hand that you might not be aware of. But if we do a 9-hole peg test, which is a very sensitive test, we might pick up, hey, something's not right with your hand, and you weren't even aware of that. Thirdly, we need to look at structure. We need to look at the structure of the brain and spinal cord, and we do that with neuroimaging. And that can be done once a year, but that's not the only part of this, right? The other 2 things are equally as important, if not more important. So I'm remiss when someone only sees their neurologist annually because I think they're missing the opportunity to do the most of what I just said.
Yeah. But I guess for maybe some older patients, meaning older in the MS line, who are very stable, maybe it's okay. But I know in the MS center in Dresden, they do quarterly.
Allow me to disagree with you. Allow me to disagree with the so-called older patient. It's my experience that as an individual ages, they risk collecting chronic symptoms. Mm-hmm. And so whereas, let's say someone who is in their 7th decade of life, they are less likely to have attacks, but they're more likely to have progression of disability. They have a higher risk of falling. They have a higher risk of deconditioning. They have a higher risk of pelvic floor atrophy contributing to bowel, bladder, and sexual dysfunction. They have a higher risk of social isolation and therefore depression and anxiety. And my point here is this lovely 70-year-old living at home, honey, you're doing so well, may have a miserable quality of life. Mm-hmm. We can help them if we can talk to them. And so I think that for different reasons, a so-called older patient can still have tremendous value with frequent visits.
Yeah. Okay. Totally agree. Totally fine. Why should MS patients have an MRI once a year? I mean, I had a very good neuroradiologist on the podcast a while ago, but please explain it with your words.
With pleasure. So when you take a picture of structure, it's one of the best biomarkers that's currently available to treat MS. And we could have a conversation about how you use the MRI to diagnose, but that's outside the purview of this discussion. Instead, we're talking about surveying the human being. So remember how I said there's 3 things we do. Well, you're going to tell me if you're experiencing something bad. I don't need an MRI for that. So if you say I can't move my left leg, I don't need an MRI. I have you telling me that. I need an MRI once a year to look for breakthrough disease activity, which is asymptomatic. So you feel right as rain and your exam is gorgeous and you're doing really well, but we get an MRI and oh my God, there's 2 new lesions on your brain. What that teaches us is even though you feel and look okay, you're not doing okay. And it's just a matter of time before you have clinical breakthrough disease. So this is a leading indicator that something ain't right. And it gives us an opportunity to intervene and up our game, shift our drug, make a change before it manifests clinically. It's a very, very important tool to pick up things before they're a clinical problem.
Yeah. So it's this one out of 10 things that happen in the brain just show as a relapse, right?
That's exactly right. Meaning 9 out of 10 times you'll have brain damage, except you and your family don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And we're not going to know unless we get a picture.
Yes. And brain atrophy is not good. I'm fine with my brain. I'm happy, but I know many people are not. So
sure.
Very important. What are the benefits of seeing your MRI results?
So you have to try to live your life with MS. And it's very hard for someone that didn't go through 27 years of school to wrap their mind around this disease. And it's also incumbent upon you to help your friends and family understand your condition. I can't tell you how many spouses, like a traditional American male, he wants his wife to be okay, and he really doesn't want to pay attention. Looking at your scan makes it real. When you see your MRI and I point to brain damage, you can't refute that, like emotionally. And so it helps make it real. It helps bring us together. And even though you haven't had bad things happen, thank goodness gracious, we can see that there's stuff on the scan. And in my example, the spouse can see. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a very, very important thing. If you break your arm, you get a cast, people will offer to carry your book bag. But if you can't think clearly because you have lesions, they just think you're lazy, and you're not. And you risk being told, oh, honey, you're just not trying very hard, or some flippant comment such as that. And sometimes those comments come from loved ones. And sometimes those comments come from yourself because you start to buy into that. Looking at the MRI helps regulate that. Say, no, it's not my fault. I have a disease that impacts my brain, and that's why. And so I think all of those things are very valuable, and they come to fruition when I show you your scan.
Yeah. And I think very importantly on that, when you have problems with your cognitive resources, you can go to a neuropsychologist and get some help. I mean, There's always help, more or less. So you just need to know, right?
Amen.
Yeah. So how often should my neurologist do the lab checks to see if my disease-modifying therapy is causing any side effects?
So each therapy has rules about how often you check labs, with the exception of glutamer acetate. Copaxone doesn't require any labs. So if you're on Copaxone with MS, I still want to check your vitamin D level, because I want to make sure that your vitamin D level is above 50 but below 100. I'm talking about a vitamin D 25OH level. And so even in that case, I'm going to check a lab once a year. If you're a gentleman on Copaxone, I'm going to check a vitamin D, and I'm also going to check an annual testosterone level. Mm-hmm. And if you tell me that you're having some fatigue, I better check a B12. I better check a thyroid panel. My point is, there's probably a lot of reasons that we may end up getting a lab here or there. And my point is not that your doctor better be ordering lots of labs. It's that if your doctor never orders a lab, that's a red flag. Now, if you're on a drug besides Copaxone, it is important, and it's actually part of the labeling of having monitoring. And so if your doctor's not doing that, now it's a really big issue, because there may be some very serious safety concerns that we might be missing.
Yeah. Why does the neurologist needs to check for invisible symptoms? I don't know how it is in the US, but I know in Germany, unfortunately for the non-MS specialists, it's not that present so far. It's getting better, but there's a lot of things to do.
The number one cause of loss of work, at least in the United States, in the setting of MS, is because of cog fog and fatigue. So it's not because someone can't walk, because you could work in a position potentially using a wheelchair for mobility. But if you can't read or think or process, that's going to take you out of the workforce. And in the United States, half of people impacted by MS have been forced to leave the workforce in only 10 years. Considering that the average age of onset is about 30, that means that 40-year-olds, very, very young people that have not paid off their college debt, they have not saved for their children, they have not saved for their retirement, are taken out of the workforce. Now, if the neurologist never asked about cognitive fatigue, brain fog, or just pathologic fatigue, then how's the person going to be better? Because we're not going to identify that it's a problem. And I don't want to find out it's a problem after you've been fired from your job. I want to find out ahead of time so we can prevent that from happening. Similarly, people impacted by MS are twice as likely compared to the general population to develop depression. And depression untreated drives MS faster. You actually neurologically get worse faster, which is terrifying. And so if you don't ask the human being about their mood, how are you supposed to know if they're doing okay? You have to ask them. Similarly, I oftentimes talk about the down theres. I jokingly say, the down theres, bowel, bladder, and bedroom. And if you would like to make a human miserable, interfere with their ability to have meaningful intercourse and make them unable to control their bowel and bladder, and you will see an absolutely miserable human being. And maybe they're not having an attack, and maybe they're not having new spots, but they won't leave the house, and they don't have any opportunities to see friends, and they're certainly not engaged in intercourse, and that's abominable. And yet, quote, honey, you look so good, end quote. So I think that as a neurologist taking care of people impacted by MS, we have to be very sensitized that those are probably more common than a weak leg or more common than a clumsy hand, and we better be asking. So if your doctor never asks, that's a red flag that's not okay. And I just want to make one more caveat. The way they ask can be very varied. Okay. So you could give the patient in the waiting room a survey they fill out, and then the doctor looks at it. He may not with words ask you if you're depressed, but it might be on the survey. That's a way of capturing your voice for some of those invisible symptoms. Yeah. One last invisible symptom that I want to call into scripture, but that I didn't mention yet, is pain. Pain is very common in MS. And a lot of people impacted by MS are stoic and they'll just deal with it, but it erodes the quality of their life. If the doctor doesn't ask if the person has pain, they may not volunteer because there's so many other things that we're talking about. And yet we can improve the quality of your life by treating your pain. So that's why they need to be asking.
Very important. Totally agree. What do you mean by med adherence, and why does my neurologist need to know if there are any kind of issues? I mean, I just found out when I had an interview with Professor Maurer that there are people, I don't know, the med adherence is sometimes below 50% or something like that, where I was really, wow.
So just to talk about epidemiologic statistics, in the United States, we can track scripts filled, like how often a script is filled. And so that can give us information about adherence by looking at, and the data is really yucky. At 2 years, 40% of people prescribed interferon beta products take them correctly. It doesn't mean they don't take them at all. It just means that only 40% are doing it the way they were asked to do it. So 60% are doing it wrong or not doing it. That's bad. If you don't take a birth control pill, it won't protect you against pregnancy. So if you purchase a pack of birth control pills, but don't swallow them and you have sex, you can get pregnant because it doesn't work. Similarly, if you're prescribed Copaxone and it just fills up your refrigerator, it won't slow down your MS. And it's not about you're a bad or a good patient. It's about it's very hard to take medicines. I mean, I take medicines and I have to do things to make myself remember. Otherwise, I'll forget. And I'm a physician. I'm supposed to, quote, know about this. And so because of all these reasons, it's incumbent upon me as a partner to you to say, hey, how's it going? Are you having any troubles? And if you're having troubles, that's not evidence of you're a bad person. That's evidence of, hey, you and I should game out how to make it better. You may find, for example, someone injecting after 10 years of injecting, they really struggle to do it. They had no problems. And over time, we call that injection fatigue. They're not tired. They're just sick and tired of injecting. And if that happens, there's no shame in that game. We just have to talk about it, and we have to come up with an alternative strategy. But imagine that I think you're taking your drug, except you're not taking your drug, and you're having disease activity, and I'm thinking that you're breaking through, and you're not. It would be better if we just had an open conversation. I haven't taken that in a couple of weeks. Oh, okay. So that's why it's important. It just needs to be a conversation, you know?
Absolutely. And there are like 20 drugs or so. I don't know if it's 20 here. I think here it's 14 in Germany, but there are really enough drugs to find a one that is fine.
Exactly right. So to your point, if somebody's not on a drug at my clinic, they don't want to be on a drug, because I've never failed in like 17 years trying to match up the right person to something that they can tolerate. So it's my contention. If you're willing to work with me, we can find something that you can put up with.
Yeah. Absolutely. What kind of inspections of my body control and cognitive abilities should my neurologist do when I come in for a visit?
So my screening program, as it relates to functional testing, is as follows. In addition to the patient-reported outcome measures, the surveys that we have people do twice a year, we also do a full neurological examination and what we call MS-FC testing, or multiple sclerosis functional composite testing. So in English, soon to be translated into German.
Yes.
The MS-FC testing involves, number one, a cognitive test called the symbol digit modality test. It's a 90-second matching test, and it's exquisitely sensitive for cognitive impairment. A score of less than 40 is a concern, and a drop of 4 points is a concern. And it only takes 90 seconds, and it's just a paper and pencil test. So as long as the person has okay vision and they can write, like their hand works to write, then we can administer that test in clinic. And it's a excellent, arguably the best cognitive screening test for deficits in MS. And that's one of the tests that we do. We also do an upper extremity test called the 9-hole peg test, which is done for time, and a 20% drop is clinically and statistically significant. So if your left hand is, let's say 15% slower, 25% slower than last time, I don't know what's wrong yet, but I know where. Now I got to go looking so I can figure out, oh, you've lost sensation. Oh, you're clumsy. Oh, you're weak. God forbid, whatever the case may be. We do for patients that are able to ambulate, we do a timed 25-foot walk. Again, that takes about 5 to 15 seconds. Doesn't take very long. And a change of 20% is clinically and statistically significant. And so if you're walking consistently in 5 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 seconds, now you're walking in 8, 9, 10 seconds, pause, we need to look into why. Lastly, we do a form of visual acuity testing, oftentimes with a low contrast visual acuity. It's a very, very sensitive vision test. Sometimes if the lighting's bad, we may use a high contrast visual acuity. And those are in addition to a standard neurological examination as a screening tool. And I think that's something that we do at our center at least twice a year.
Yeah, I do the same. And it's nice to hear that there is the analog version, because I do it more or less all digitally in Dresden. But there's an analog version, of course. Yeah. And the walking, it doesn't take that long, and it's totally fine. It's a very quick and I like to see my results, to be honest. I like to see, hey, I'm still doing good. Fine.
To your point, in the same way that it's really helpful to show someone their scan, it's also really helpful to go over your testing results. So I jokingly call that the MS Olympics, and I'll say, let's go over your Olympic scores. I have worked in centers where we did computer versions of everything I said. Nowadays, in my own clinic, I use an analog version, which works just as well.
Of course, there's no problem with it. Coming back to the therapy options, for whom is it? I don't know. Basic therapy, it's what is called in German. Yep. It's one-to-one translation. Okay, and why should most patients be treated with more effective medications?
Now, this is arguably the most contentious point in my entire video. And in fact, I had one of my own patients call me concerned, asking if I thought I was going to get sued for making that comment. And it's not my intention to say that a therapy that you're taking is bad or good, because I don't know how you're doing. And it's also not my intention. Well, I guess it's not my intention to say that we should throw all of them out and never say the word Copaxone or beta-serin or what have you. That's not what I mean. What I mean is there are evolutions to products. For example, I'm showing you on the screen my iPhone 11, right? My first cell phone was not an iPhone 11. It was a flip phone, and it just had a keypad. And so I could call someone, and that was what the phone could do. This phone has a computer, and I could translate German with it. I mean, I can almost do anything. I can buy airline tickets. I mean, this thing like would fly, right? And what I'm pointing out is it's an evolution in that technology. So I don't see anyone walking around with the old flip phones from 20 years ago. Well, interferon beta products and glutaminyl acetate in their day were cutting edge. They were truly a revolution, going from no options to something fantastic. And since then, we have developed 20 plus other products. Many of them have been compared to those first-line therapies and in head-to-head studies beat the pants off them. So if you are on one of these drugs and responding, then we sometimes will refer to you as a legacy patient, someone that's been on it for a long time, and you may be a super responder. I have patients that they're super responders. They are doing beautifully on these drugs. Would I take them off? Never, ever, ever. My point here is if you're newly diagnosed and they're offering you a first-line shot, I'm not okay with that. That would be like going to a iPhone store and them trying to sell you the flip phone from 20 years ago and saying, here, this is your first phone. And you're saying, yeah, but what about that one with the cool computer and it's got the screen? No. This phone's good for you. You would leave the store. You would say, no, I want the new one. So similarly, if you're on a drug and you have breakthrough disease activity, there may be a discussion with your clinician about escalating. If they're taking you from whatever you're on onto a first-line shot, that's not escalating. And again, I have the same concerns. So I have patients in my clinic that are on all of the injections, and some of them are killing it. I mean, they're doing amazingly well. But I vigorously check neuropsych testing. I vigorously examine them. I send them for MRIs, and we watch very, very carefully. And so that's what I mean when I say, if they're offering you a first-line injection, run for the hills.
Yes, and we were just discussing in a podcast with Professor Morras a study from I think Norway against Denmark,
yes.
Where they
awesome study,
where they saw that Norway is doing so much better with really hit hard and early.
Yeah, it was the national approach in Sweden actually was to start with a B-cell depleter. And the national approach amongst the Danes is to start with a pill and then escalate to a B-cell depleter. And so what it did is it created two national registries where you could compare the results. And what they found was the earlier application of highly effective medicine had a much better outcome.
Yeah.
Now, with an individual human, it's, yes or no, it's binary. And if you're listening to this podcast on an injection and doing amazing, I don't want you to stop your injection. But if you're having breakthrough disease and you need to escalate, I don't think you should stay on that class of medicine. I think you should escalate to one of the newer therapies.
Absolutely. I'm one of the super responders, but if there would be breakthrough disease activity, of course, I would go to a higher.
And it's really cool in 2022 that you have all those options. So you may hopefully never need to escalate, but knowing that there are options out there, I think is reassuring.
Absolutely. I find that great. Why is it wrong to send patients back home with information about 4 or 5 treatments so they should decide on their own, not having studied it at all?
Exactly. So I've never heard of a cardiologist who says, sir, you had a heart attack. Now go home and read about heart medicines and tell me which ones you want. Like, that's nonsense. Except that's exactly what happens in some clinics in the United States. Now, I don't know about in Germany. But there are clinics in the United States where the doctor will give them a form on Copaxone, a form on Tecfidera. They'll give them a couple of these kits and say, go home and read and tell me which one you want. And to me, that's reprehensible, because you don't come and see me because I'm attractive or because I'm really good at tennis or because I'm clever with songwriting. You come and see me presumably because I know some stuff about MS medicines. That's the reason that you come to see a neurologist. So you should expect some guidance. I completed 27 years of school so that I can help guide you in which is the right medicine for you. Just giving you a bunch of packets, I think, is really disrespectful to the patient and to the family. And I don't think that's an appropriate way of doing medicine. And I don't think it's done in any field I've ever heard of, except, unfortunately, mine.
Okay. Yeah. But of course, just to make it clear, maybe it's sometimes that I think, okay, I don't really want, I don't know, some kind of going once a month to my doctor or every 6 months. So you might offer me options that are fine with me. And
Correct.
Then I have to make the decisions based on these roundabouts, right? Just for the other patients.
So that is shared decision making. That's beautiful. That's where I listen and learn from you, and you listen and learn from me. And then together we fight through the medicines. And that's where maybe I would say, okay, I've got it. We've talked. I've narrowed it down to 3 options. I have homework. I want you to learn about them. Get your questions, come back, and we'll talk about your questions. And together we'll pick the best one for you. What I'm talking about in my 10 red flags is not that. It's the doctor not talking, saying, go learn and come back and give me your final answer. That's what's not okay. No, what you're describing, a shared decision-making, is beautiful. That's the way it should be.
Yep, absolutely. And the shared decision-making, now we're coming to that point. What are the benefits of working together as a patient-physician team to achieve best possible outcome for my life with MS? Because it's at the end, it's about my life.
Exactly. So the relationship that you have with your MS neurologist is intimate. It's an intimate relationship. Now, it's not like sexually intimate, but it's an intimate relationship nonetheless. I mean, you tell your neurologist things you don't tell your spouse or your priest sometimes. And really, you're gaming out how to live your very best life. I don't know how I can help you do that if I don't know enough about you. So it's not that I need to attend all your birthday parties and go on vacation with you, but I want to know, what do you like to do outside of coming to visit me? For example, I give a homework assignment to every new consultative visit. It's to write down 3 to 5 long-term life goals. And then the next time we meet, I have you tell me them, and I write them in the computer. And the reason is I can tell you how to beat MS. I can't tell you why. You have to tell me why. And I think you should want me to know that. If your life's goal is to climb Monte Picchu, I need to know that because we have work to do. If your life's goal is to walk your son down the aisle on his wedding night, I need to know, how old is your son and when is that going to happen? And I need to help you prepare for that. If I don't ever ask you about your life, I can't provide adequate benefit to you. And so I'm not saying, that you need to be interrogated about your boyfriends and girlfriends, but I do think the neurologist should at least engage in a meaningful conversation about what you're into, what you like, what you don't like. I mean, if you're a piano player, I need to know that because I want to know if there's any impact in your piano playing. If I want to assess, for example, dexterity on telemedicine and you're a pianist, I just have you play the piano and listen. That's a really good way to do that. But if I don't know that you're a pianist, I don't know that's available.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just had a really nice example in Germany where Frank, somebody who was an MS patient who was on my podcast a while ago, his grandson had I don't know the word in English, but he's turning 14 and that thing in the church. He went there and he wanted to be walked by his grandfather. Yes. And he really trained that hard. He is EDSS level 8.0 and Wow. He really trained very, very hard to do it. And he did it because he was so full of emotional power.
That's awesome. And if he didn't make that clear to his neurologist wouldn't be able to help him do that. Yeah, so that's exactly right. And that's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah. So what would you suggest now, people who realize, oh, there are one, maybe more flags, red flags? What should they do?
I think they should remember that it's their body, it's their brain, it's their money, and they only get to live life once. And that's a long-winded way of saying, I want you to be more selfish. I want you to be a self-advocate and say, excuse me, doctor, I would like to see my MRIs, please. Please show me my MRIs. To say, excuse me, doctor, I understand I haven't had an attack, but I can't control my bladder. I wet my pants. Will you please help me? It's my hope that this sensitizes you to be aware of what I at least think is an expectation of a good doctor. Now, if they're doing one of these, does it mean they're horrible and you should fire them? Maybe, probably not, but it's worth a conversation. If your doctor never gets labs, you might say, hey, do you need any labs? They may say, oh my gosh, you're right. I forgot we do. You see what I mean? So it's my hope that somebody listening to this thinks critically about their life with MS and how they can optimize it. And if their partner, their intimate partner, their doctor is not doing some of these things, maybe that's a good discussion to have.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there are really some, let's say, lighthouses in Germany or in the German-speaking countries who do very well. And I always have them on the show to hopefully spread out the words that there is really good treatment, really good taking care of doctors. And please, you as a neurologist in the field, try to be as good. And yeah, please talk to your doctors if they are not. Normally you become a doctor because you want to help people and not to become rich and famous.
Correct. If the goal going into medicine was to become rich and famous, then that person made a terrible, terrible error. No, we are servants. We help people live better lives. We assist others. That's what we do.
Yeah. So again, I mean, you mentioned it a bit at the beginning, but what is your mission and motivating for providing so much information for people living with MS? I mean, I see you, bam, 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 Dr. Aaron Boster published a new video, new video, and I'm like, whoa. You don't have a life, do you?
I have a goal of educating, empowering, and energizing people impacted by MS. I really want to create some MS content that is easily digestible, easily understandable, and free to access at any time. And if nothing else, hopefully I can help educate and raise your understanding of the disease so that you can have a more successful engagement with your clinician. You know, in my religion, there's a term called a mitzvah when you do a good deed. It's a mitzvah. So if you walk an old lady across the street, say, oh, that's a mitzvah. You're a mensch, right? And then there's an option. There's something called a double mitzvah where you do a good deed and someone can't pay you back. And I sort of, if I may, view my YouTube channel as a double mitzvah because I may help someone in Dresden, Germany that I never get to meet. And that is a gift to me. That is almost undescribable. It's very special. And so I'm just really delighted. And as long as people find the content helpful, I'll keep making videos every Monday and hopefully people keep learning and enjoying.
Very good. And we will translate, or I will translate this one, so people in German who are not that familiar with English, not that fine, they can listen to it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's so kind of you.
Thank you. Which development in MS research or treatment would you like to see in the next 5 years?
You said 5 years?
Yeah, I said 5 years. Okay.
So can I do 2?
Of course you can.
I'll do 1 therapeutic and 1 diagnostic. So protein tyrosine kinase inhibitors, abbreviated BTK inhibitors, are a class of medicine that are being developed by multiple pharma companies right now. And the medicine is very exciting because it brings to the table some things that we have not yet been able to do. So, for example, BTK inhibitors block B-cell signaling without murder. Mm-hmm. So there's really good drugs out there like rituximab and ocrelizumab and ufatumumab, which are very effective, but they have an increased risk of infection because they kill B cells. This BTK inhibitor blocks them without murder, which decreases the risk of infection. Also, there's there's two halves to the immune system. The adaptive, that's the B and T cells, and then there's the innate immune system. And to date, not a single one of our therapies can directly impact the innate immune system. BTK inhibitors can. They can actually turn off a resident in the brain called microglia. So it's really, really exciting. So therapeutically, I'm tickled about this new line of drugs that we're developing. And it's my hope in specific that they work in progression. I think there are some reasons why that might be really great for progressive MS. So fingers crossed there. Now, diagnostically, I am really excited about serum neurofilament light chain. So this is a blood test, which is not yet commercially available in the United States, but it's really close to prime time. And we're still working out some kinks, but essentially it gives us a biomarker that's not an MRI, which could tell us some really exciting things like, are you responding to your therapy? Are you getting ready to have an attack? Is your disease progressing? And we can use it, at least in research, it looks like you can use it as a treatment response. So higher is bad, lower is good. And what we've seen, for example, in some studies is if someone's on a therapy and they're not really doing well, they have a certain neurofilament light chain. And when you put them on a escalated drug, it drops. The neurofilament drops. And so this could be a very exciting biomarker. Instead of asking you to stick your head in a machine, I may be just getting blood more frequently. And so that could potentially be a really great game changer. So those are two things that I'm super excited about. And I think they're both going to hit in well under 5 years.
Great. Yes. And the neurofilament light chains are always hard to pronounce. I had Dr. Akün from Dresden here.
Yes.
She was explaining it, was very interesting. And yes, they do it every now and then already. But of course, maybe you have to pay for it, maybe not. Hopefully it becomes normal part of the healthcare system.
Yeah. Right now in the United States, outside of research, you can't get one. Like you can't order one through your insurance product. But it's my hope that very soon that will change.
Great. So where can people find you and your content, Dr. Boster?
Well, that's nice of you. So I have a website, which is bosterms.com. So B as in boy, O-S-T-E-R, MS.com. I have a YouTube channel that I've referenced, and that's my name, Aaron Boster, MD. I also have a presence on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And again, that's at Aaron Boster, MD. Yeah. So, if you're on the interweb, stop by and say hello, howdy, hi. I would love to meet you if you're listening to me right now.
Great. Thank you very much for spending your time. Thank you very much for everything you do for your patients, and keep on going.
Thank you for what you're contributing to. I mean, I'm honored that you're going to translate what we said into German and a bunch of people can learn from it. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. You may also be interested in the episodes and posts that have already been published, which you can find at ms-perspektive.de/podcast. Perspective with a K. You can also get a free PDF with 11 tips for your positive impact on MS at ms-perspektive.de/newsletter. If you'd like to connect, you can reach me at ms-perspektive.de or on Instagram at ms.perspektive. See you next time.